or to safely return our center. We have a lot to cover this evening, so I'll keep my remarks short. Today marks the 239th day since the wildfire on June 30th that devastated our community. It has been a long, challenging, complex journey with many obstacles. However, each day we continue to persevere and make strides towards recovery. Over the course of this journey, I have witnessed what it means to truly come together. Residents, businesses, agencies, organizations, other levels of government, and neighboring communities continue to go above and beyond to support one another. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Today, we have a number of updates from our staff and partners, but I want to quickly highlight a few pieces of good news. On February the 10th, the province announced that the village will be receiving a total of $8.3 million in funding. This funding will be used to support the ongoing village operations and recovery. The province will provide $6.26 million immediately to help with wildfire response and recovery costs. Of that, $1.3 million has been identified for debris removal in the village. The province will also provide $2.1 million for 3 years to aid in village operations. On February the 15th of 2022, Council entered into a memorandum of agreement for information sharing with Lytton First Nation. Yesterday, Council resolved to correspond with BC Hydro to rebuild an overhead like-for-like distribution system at no cost to the village or its residents. Council has rescinded bylaw 750 and introduced 2 new building bylaws, 710 and 711. We will be continuing to receive feedback from residents on these bylaws until March 4th. The Canadian Red Cross and Emergency Management BC have agreed to fund a wildfire disaster debris removal program within the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, including the village of Lytton. This program will help property owners impacted by the 2021 wildfires needing assistance with debris removal. Finally, thanks to the hard work of the volunteers, residents, staff, the Resiliency Centre continues to offer a welcoming space for our area residents to connect with one another and access valuable resources and supports. We'll do our best to answer questions that you have today, though we still may not have the answers to some. Thank you all again for being here tonight with us. I'd like to introduce the Parliamentary Secretaries, Jennifer Rice and Rolly Russell, to provide an update.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here again tonight. I'm Jennifer Rice, Parliamentary Secretary for Emergency Preparedness, and I'm joined by Rolly Russell, the Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Development. And to begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the territory of the Coast Tsimshian people in Prince Rupert. We're really thankful for the opportunity to speak with you again. My apologies. As you know, we're both working as recovery liaisons to support the community through the challenging and ongoing task of rebuilding. We recognize the devastation in Lytton continues to be incredibly difficult. We want to reassure you that we're working with the Lytton Council to support the council. The province is providing $8.36 million in funding to support the village with its ongoing operations and recovery. And this funding is also in place to support legal and governance issues and recovery consultation. 2.1 million of this funding will support the village through 3 years of core operations, so they can focus on planning, recovery, and rebuilding rather than on revenue generation. This is in addition to the 1 million that was provided in December to support Lytton's recovery. Earlier this month, we introduced legislative changes that will allow the Lytton Council to repeal and replace important bylaws that were destroyed in the wildfire. It's so important for different levels of government to work together in lockstep, so we can all guide recovery and make it as efficient as possible. So I'm going to turn things over to Rolly to talk more about some of the progress we're making. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'd like to acknowledge to everybody that I'm speaking tonight, not from home, but from the traditional territory of the Lekwungen people, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. Thanks to the Lytton recovery team, particularly and first off, and both local and provincial governments. It does feel like we're making some progress. And I know how difficult this time has been for all of you, many of you. And I want to reiterate that we're committed to taking the right steps for recovery of the community. And certainly we're all very well aware that people want and need to see things happening on the ground. And the next big step in that process is getting debris removal up and running fully, both for the municipal properties as well as, of course, for the rest of the community. As Mayor Polderman mentioned, just an intro there, to make sure that this is happening as quickly as possible, the province has committed to pay for debris removal, and we're working to find ways to support more of you through that process. This isn't a given provincially, and as I know from my own experience working through catastrophic flood recovery in the boundary. So I'm really excited that we're able to support in that way. This will help ensure that there aren't any unnecessary holdups, and everyone in the community ideally can move forward together as quickly as possible. We certainly look forward to hearing from you all tonight here and taking your feedback back to Minister Farnworth, our cabinet, Minister Osborne, and our provincial partners. As I've said here before, I think all recognize maybe a little too directly that recovery can be a long process with unexpected obstacles along the way setting us back. But I'm hopeful today as we see progress on the horizon, and with it a little bit more hope for future action. We all want to get you back in the community that you love as quickly as possible, and I want to reiterate that we are all very aware of that and working as hard as we can to get there. Together, I am confident that we will get there. And I know realistically tonight we're here to hear from the Lytton recovery team that's leading the process and not from us. So I will stop there and turn it back over to Mayor and the recovery team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parliamentary Secretaries Rice and Russell. We really appreciate you being here today with us. I'd now like to introduce MLA Jackie Taggart for an update on her.
Well, good evening, everyone, and it's great to be here tonight. I had the opportunity to meet with Jennifer and Rolly today, and also to talk with Minister Farnworth. And I would like to start by saying thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's working on the ground, who's making a difference in the community where people live. Because sometimes Victoria seems a long ways away. And every day, our job is to take down barriers and to try and make sure that the recovery goes as smoothly as possible. But our job's not as important as those of you on the ground who are doing the day-to-day work. And so we have a commitment amongst all of us who are serving in Victoria that our job is to take down barriers and to get people home. So I'm very interested in seeing where we're at tonight. My office is as close as a phone call or an email, and very much want to thank everyone who is working so hard to move this forward. I said to Rolly and Jennifer today, we need to see action on the ground, and I know that people are anxious to see that happen. So I'm here to help, here to listen, and believe you me, I'm here to make sure your voice is heard in Victoria. So thank you all very much, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily Taggart. We really appreciate you being here as well with us. So hello, everyone. If we haven't met before, my name is Jasmine Patrick, and I'll just be helping moderate the community meeting again today. So as we're getting the slideshow up here, I just want to give you a really quick glance at the agenda so you know what to expect for the next 2 hours here and what we're going to cover. So in a second, I'm going to run through some housekeeping items and Zoom tools as I normally do at the beginning. And then as usual, staff and a number of agencies will provide updates on recovery and rebuild initiatives. And then finally, after all of the updates, we'll open the session up to all questions. At the very end of that, we'll just let you know what the date of the next community meeting is. So the purpose of today's session is to provide an opportunity for residents to ask questions and provide us with feedback, and also to provide you with the latest updates on the short-term recovery plan and what we're doing, what are the actions that have been done over the last month. There are a few rules for participation today. So you should be aware that the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the Village of Lytton website right after this. We ask that you be respectful in your tone and with the use of the chat box. Also, please be respectful of the use of the time by making your questions direct and to the point and allowing others to speak. Please use appropriate language, refrain from using profanities or abusive language. Negative comments toward any individuals today won't be tolerated, and individuals that are using abusive language will be removed from the session. If any media are in the room today, as always, you're very welcome to be here. We're very happy to have you. However, the primary purpose of this meeting is to answer residents' questions. So we respectfully ask that you hold your questions and please send them to communication@lytton.ca after the meeting and we'll respond to them. Finally, the last thing I want to note is to please speak up. We're here today to hear your thoughts and answer your questions and get your feedback in order to help us make better decisions every day. So please share your ideas and ask your questions. The next slide here, I'll just take a second, maybe 1 minute to explain how to use the Zoom platform in case anyone is new to the platform. And then we'll run through some just general best practices. So first, see all the arrows there. At the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a chat button. If you click that, the chat box is going to pop up to the right of your screen. So you can use the chat today to send any feedback or questions. At the end of the meeting, as I said, after all of the updates, there's going to be an opportunity to ask all of your questions out loud. So to do that, please use the raise hand function on Zoom, and you can find that by clicking reactions at the bottom of your screen there, and then clicking raise hand. I think there is a couple people that called in on a phone, so you can still participate using a landline. *6 is to toggle mute and unmute. That's *6. And then *9 you can use to raise your hand if you want to ask a question out loud. So *6 and *9. Finally, if you run into any sort of technical issues and need help or support, please email communication@lytton.ca and one of us will do our very best to help you out today. So that is it for Zoom best practices. So we are on to the actual updates of the evening. The first section today will be safe return. And the first update will be from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. So I'd like to introduce Brian to provide an update on highways.
Good evening, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. Hey, Brian Taylor of the Ministry of Transportation. The Highway 1 corridor, again, it's progressed nicely. Most of the work along the corridor has been done. I'm glad to say that the Nickaman River Bridge, we are looking to open it later Sunday. We finished off some work that was required for the barrier installation. Do some cast in place concrete work, so that'll be done, ready to open on, we're looking later Sunday afternoon. So we'll be back to 2 lanes on the existing highway bridge at that location. There will be a speed reduction through there. Again, it's ongoing works down below, but we will be getting traffic off the detour and back to 2 lanes on the existing bridge. So it's a big win for us. The other sites are minor cleanup this week will be happening. Say the Tank Hill, there's some minor works to be done there, but the lights and the rail system should be working quite well there. Yeah, that's a big update for us at this point. Recovery efforts, again, all the sites are being looked at from a long-term recovery phase. So again, we're just in the early planning stages of that, but we'll be progressing with moving forward to long-term fixes for the identified sites. For this section anyways, so the Jackass remaining, the ACRA will be remaining in place for the time being, again, until there are long-term recovery plans there. So that'll remain, and then Tank Hill will have the lights installed until a long-term recovery can be there. Again, after this weekend, it should be back to normal 2-lane traffic at most sites, except for the Jackass site being a single lane still. Brad Bushel, our operations manager, is here as well. If you can provide an update on some of the other roads in the area.
Thanks for that, Brian. Can everybody hear me here? Good. Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. Brian's been focusing on those key sites in the canyon there, and I'm the operations manager for the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and Merit. So I'm in the middle of Highway 8 and Coquihalla and Trans-Canada there as well, and then of course Highway 12. So regarding the situation at Lytton there from the fire, our highway systems weren't overly impacted directly from the fire, but they were closed for a while there, as everybody knows, to accommodate the firefighting activities, and then the debris and the torrents that came down following that, which we cleaned up rather quickly in the summertime, and then of course this latest one here in November. The atmospheric river caused us a lot of grief with numerous sites across the whole region. As Brian mentioned, the main ones I think for Lytton are the Trans-Canada corridors there. So while we're experiencing a few delays there, we've managed to get the accesses through. Currently, we're dealing with a new issue on Highway 12 just north of Lytton towards Lillooet. We have a bit of a slide happening on the highway there. It's reduced to single lane at the moment, but we're actively monitoring that one as well, and we have geotechs and hydrologists and whatnot looking at that site for mitigative works that we can do, and then see how that one settles out. It is actively moving now, and I can't tell you millimeters or inches or centimeters per day. It seems to do its thing there, but we will keep that route open as long as possible for access up through to the Lillooet area for residents. For our piece through town there, the main street there, of course, we're working with all the agencies involved to make sure that the access through the town is open and feasible, and it's really in a static sort of situation for us now. We're maintaining it for winter operations and things, and it'll remain open, and we'll do whatever we can do to assist with the recovery in the Lytton area for any of the agencies that need any sort of special services from us. We're available. So
That's great. Thank you so much, Brian and Brad. Our next update will be on debris removal. Sorry, can't talk today. Debris removal and the Heritage Committee, and both are going to come from James, our project manager.
Thanks, Jasmine. Hi, everybody. Good evening. So yeah, hot topic, debris removal, hearing from MLA Taggart and parliamentary secretaries. We want to see action on the ground. So that's certainly what I'm trying to drive forward with the support of council and the recovery team. We do have a plan. It's looking very good at this point in time. So based on council's direction at the last council meeting to enter into direct award contracts, we are ready to notify the public through BC Bid of our intent to direct award. We've got draft contracts in place and scopes of work being developed with the consultants and contractors. Our contractor tells us that they could mobilize, if given the word, in the first week of March at this point in time. So very much on schedule with what we were hoping to see. So we're just working through a few more details with them to formalize those contracts, get them in place, and really get them moving. And so, as I'd mentioned on the last call where we had an opportunity to chat, we're really focusing on the first 5 municipal properties. A lot of that is just because they're easier to access, and they're also on Fraser Street, so they're not interfering with the Highway 12 corridor. So they just make a lot of sense for us to get in and start that work in a favorable environment. I would say to the residents in the community that want to see debris removal commencing on their properties to please notify the village. There is a web page up on the village website that does authorize us to access a right of entry onto your properties. I know some people have started to email and call about that. Thank you for that. But we are looking for everybody to take a look at that, reach out to Owen on site, or the phone numbers on the village website to start providing that right of access onto the property, so I can start planning for additional cleanup as the plans move forward. We have submitted our work plan for those 5 properties to the Cumsheen Heritage Committee at this point. They've acknowledged receipt and intend to give us their guidance by Tuesday of next week. So again, I think most of the work that we're doing just for this early mobilization is well in hand and moving forward, and I'm feeling pretty confident that we'll see some traction on the ground very soon. Obviously, there's a lot more work to do. So while we're doing that early work with the 5 municipal properties, we will be doing the hard work of the testing, the permitting, the remedial action planning. So a lot of the consulting and engineering work that needs to be done to support a larger and more fulsome remediation of the properties. And so that work also commences through these contracts that Mayor and Council have authorized us to move into. I'm sure there's lots of other questions about debris removal, but that's really the high level and the items that we're focusing on in the near term over the next 2 weeks, and then obviously the mid and long term planning to be able to continue that work path. Moving on to the heritage component, there is a very close to complete community message ready to be sent out. The Cumsheen Heritage Committee and the province are working on a communique to be able to provide more clarity to people around the process. That will be going up on the village's website, and we are hoping to be able to put an email address for the village's website where people can submit their questions or reach out to the Cumsheen Heritage Committee through that portal. I will just give a high-level overview of some of the things that the Cumsheen Heritage Committee is responsible for. And I think, first and primarily, it's heritage conservation. It's recognizing the land and the value of heritage conservation in the community for the long term for the residents. There's also the development of the archaeological permit. Sorry, that one always gets me. And really the fact that the heritage is protected under the Heritage Conservation Act of British Columbia, and some of these sites can't be disturbed without permits in place. So the Cumsheen Heritage Committee is working on developing an umbrella permit that really will expedite the process for homeowners and residents to be able to do work in the community. It's also really hoping to expedite the work for future properties and future development in the work while we're here doing it now. There are a couple of identified activities. There's recovery activities. And so those would be really the surface debris removal, the stripping of contaminated soils and sediments, any demolition and removal of foundations and structures. And so those generally would be reviewed by the committee. This is where people hear about cultural monitoring. This is where the committee would recommend whether cultural monitoring needs to occur at that point in time or not. There would also be, identification of actual known archaeological sites, as well as chance finds for archaeological sites while we're doing this work. Those would also require additional permitting, so site alteration permitting. And so the Heritage Committee is working on trying to expedite a process for all of us as we get into the ground and start doing our recovery work. The second thing is the rebuilding activities. And so again, this would be new foundations or structures or any new developments such as utilities and infrastructure. And again, it's a very similar process. So by getting the process right in the first instance, which is what the committee is trying to do right now, the idea and my belief is that it will expedite the process over the long-term recovery of the community by getting it right now. And so again, I think it is similar to asking the residents to reach out to us for right of access onto the properties through the cleanup. Recommend that people understand the heritage process and what the committee is doing. And also, if you intend to do any self-work on properties, to make sure you reach out and notify the Heritage Committee of the work you intend to do and consult through that process. Myself and the village staff are happy to assist in that process as well. Jasmine, I think that's it for my section.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. The next update will be on the building bylaw update. And so I'll turn it over to Ron Dickinson.
Thank you, Jasmine. Hello, everyone. Oh, there we go. I was having a little trouble with my video. Okay, glad to be here tonight and glad to have the opportunity to talk to the larger group. It's a pleasure, and I'm not in your area. I'm in the Silix territory tonight, and which is where I live. And I make as many trips over there as I can to get my feet on the ground in Lytton. And apparently we'll be able to make some more. Anyway, the building bylaw. The building bylaw now, the stage that we're in right now with the proposed bylaw 710 and 711 is that it's in your ballpark. We're waiting now for comments from the public so that Mayor and Council can take them into consideration, and we anticipate after that process is completed, your part of the process will complete on the 4th of March, and then the changes or the suggestions will be taken into consideration by council, and it'll get another second and third reading. And we anticipate by the end of March that the bylaw, in whatever form it finally takes, the two bylaws will be adopted by the end of March anyway, somewhere towards the end of March. So that's the hope, and it's up in the air at the moment and waiting for your input. So we're looking forward to that. And as far as the building bylaw goes, that's all there is to say at the moment. We'll see where it takes us. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Ron. So there has been a little change to the agenda tonight just to accommodate some schedules. So we will next be going to essential services and all of the updates associated with essential services. So first on the list, we have health services. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa from Interior Health Authority for her update.
Thank you very much, Jasmine, and thank you everyone for accommodating my schedule. I have to be off by 8 for another meeting. Long days these days, but I have some really good news and I wanted to share it with you. So I know that in my last meeting here, we reported how we were moving home health services and mental health and substance use services back into the LFN building, which we have done. We've hired our first primary care nurse and we have an MOA posted right now. It was hard to recruit an MOA to the area, to be honest, because of the requirements. And we were hoping to have local recruitment to ensure that we had local industry, local people being supported by the local industry. So we do have a candidate on a little bit of a different type of posting to relax some of the requirements and are going through the hiring process right now. And the most exciting news is late this afternoon, I met with 2 physicians, both of which who would like to provide services within the LFN building. We may have to get a bit of a mobile solution in place because we're quickly running out of space with the number of people we'll be moving in there for healthcare service provision. But that will allow us to provide primary care services both in community and virtually to the citizens of Lytton and the surrounding areas. And I would like to apologize. I meant to acknowledge that while I am not in my typical nation of the Secwepemc people, I am calling in from the Kwantlen First Nation in the Lower Mainland.
Great news. Thank you so much, Lisa, and thanks for being here. I'll now turn it over to First Nations Health Authority, and I think we have Londi here with us today. There we go. I just asked you to unmute, so hopefully that will work.
There, now does that work?
That does, thank you.
Thank you. Laundi Riffle, I'm from the Statlium Nation, Shalath, or also known as Seton Lake, and my grandmother is from the Clapham Nation, Cooksbury. So, but I live, work, and play in the Secwépemc Nation. So thank you, along the lines of what Lisa provided in terms of healthcare services, primarily First Nations Health Authority does provide more or less services to those that are living in Lytton First Nations. So recently we've ensured that all the community members will receive the rapid PCR tests for COVID, things like that, rapid damage assessments, or we're working in collaboration with Indigenous Services Canada to ensure that the community members that were affected by any of the flooding have their homes assessed. Mental health and traditional wellness services are being offered to the First Nations community members in Lytton. There's the 1-800 number that they can call and somebody answers and then directs them into the appropriate place. We also have our 1-800 number health benefits line where people can call in and get some direct mental health one-to-one services, and it's billed directly to FNHA, so there's no middleman there. We do have our environmental health officers. The one, Dan Ferguson, he's away on a much needed holiday. He'll be back for next week when there is, I believe there is a food truck coming to the community, and we're going to attend that as well and meet and greet all the nation members and anybody or community members, pardon me, that are there that would like to have some faces to the names and have a little more one-to-one support. So Dan will be back, the environmental health officer, to provide any updates there as well. So we keep in mind and bear in mind with the recent COVID protocols, and we do our very best to provide the services that we need to under these protocols, although we all understand it's very much of a challenge. Should anybody need anything else from First Nations Health Authority, they're certainly able to reach out to me. I'm the regional manager for Health Emergency Management, and we can follow up with any of your needs. I just want to say a huge shout out to my colleagues and at Interior Health, Lisa and Ian, who have worked alongside us. This has been a trying time for all of us, and had we not worked collaboratively, things wouldn't be where they're at. So thank you to Interior Health, Cookstrom, all my relations.
Thank you so much, Lundy. So we'll now move on to updates on the Resiliency Centre. So I'm going to turn it over to Darlene Clark today.
For that, Jasmine. So my name is Darlene Clark, and I work with Emergency Management BC. And my feet are touching the traditional territory of the Secwépemc. And I'm very honored and humbled to be supporting the Unlakapen within their traditional territory as well. So EMBC has been partnering with the Village of Lytton on many recovery efforts, and one of them being the Resiliency Centre. So I'll just provide a little bit of an update. There was a cedar weaving workshop on the 12th, which was sponsored by the River Festival, and they had an excellent turnout of about 20 participants. The last week has been a little bit quieter with a few walk-ins for coffee and chat and a visit. But also to use the scanner and printer, which is an excellent service available to people. So homeowners have been coming in and using it for printing out their grant applications. Feel free to pop in there and download the waiver form for debris removal. There were 4 caseworkers from the Canadian Red Cross this week, along with Tony Lynn Sam from Community Futures Sun Country. Disaster psychosocial team has been supporting with mental health and wellness, and they've been there on Thursdays. So the 3rd week consecutively now, and they've been receiving mental health support referrals as well. They're committing to be there every 2 weeks moving forward, and they're also willing to sponsor some community events. So Village Lytton is considering a community dinner in March and potentially on the May Day long weekend as well. We are hearing some concerns, so just want to note that, you know, we are hearing them and we're looking for solutions. And some of those are around access to services because of lack of transportation, access to food banks the relief centers in the areas and the food banks. Some people are housebound and transportation can be quite high. So just wanting to recognize that the team is hearing that and we're looking for solutions. Work BC has been committing to providing outreach services at the Resiliency Centre as well. So they'll be in person in the village twice a month. And we're looking to have them there once a week, depending on the community needs. So if you are looking for a job or are looking for some support from the Work BC offices, please head down to the Resiliency Centre, because the more activity that happens down there, the more we'll be able to have them come and participate. They also provide virtual services anytime over the phone as well. And just a reminder, I said there's some laptops and computers and printers down there. So if you need technology to access that online services, it can all be found at the Resiliency Centre. Couple of things that we're looking into because we know that they're needs. So just want everybody to be aware that we're thinking about them. Aboriginal Skills Employment Training Strategy is looking for some office space. There's job boards and a whiteboard set up at the Resiliency Centre, and job postings are going to start to be posted there. Job postings are also going to be at the post office and the bank. We recognize not all residents have computers or smartphones or internet, so we're trying to make sure that we get information out as much as possible. And the Enlakatmi Child and Family Services have brought in counseling for children in the Lytton area as well. A bit of an update on the business incubator. So Community Futures Sun Country has been partnering with us as well on the Resiliency Centre, which has been a glorious partnership. So they're operating Monday to Friday, 10 to 4, with a full-time person providing assistance to businesses. And it's actually Community Futures Sun Country that we can thank for the technology that's there. So the laptops, they've been able to provide them, but they've also upgraded them to include some Word and Excel applications. So that's really great news. And the regional business liaison, Daphne Nelson, she's been reaching out and continues to reach out to businesses to complete a pulse check. So some of the questions that have been asked, or two of the questions that have been asked, one is your business currently operating? And so we have a little bit of data on that. And then are you working towards the 2022 restart? And so there's a little data on that as well. So if you wanted to participate in that pulse check or have a conversation with Community Futures, pop on down to the Resiliency Centre. There's also a 1-800 number. I'll just read it out, and then Jasmine, if you're able to pop it into the chat. This is for the Community Futures office. So it's 1-800-567-9911. And if you call that number, Community Futures will be able to connect you with any sort of business support that you might need. So I want to just send out a huge thank you and a shout out to Deb Arnott, who's the general manager with Community Futures, also to Daphne Nelson, who's with Community Futures. And a really big thank you, and I know you're on the call because I saw you. Denise O'Connor has been an amazing volunteer. So I just want to take this moment and opportunity to say thank you so much for all of the support that you're providing out there on the ground. Wanted to give a little bit of an update on the Relief Centre. So Resiliency Centre is to help support access to services. If you have questions about, mental health supports, disaster psychosocial, want access to business support, that's at the Resiliency Centre. And the Relief Centres are food support, food banks, and looking for essential services. So Enlakatmi Nation Travel Council was able to support hiring Jay Baxter as a food security coordinator. And this was thanks to funding through Food Banks BC. So we're really excited to have that happen. Jay Baxter is leading a sub-working group, and they're looking to create a regional relief center. So this is a partnership of all the communities in the region, including the village. So she's looking at a centralized relief center location. She's scoping out quotes for delivery trucks and truck drivers and some casual part-time positions. And also tracking and observing some of the high need items. And again, bringing it back to the team so that we can try to solution some of those things. I think that is everything for my update. Thanks, Jasmine.
Great. Thank you so much, Darlene. So much content. That's great. We also have David Hutton here, who can provide a bit of an update on disaster psychosocial services, also available at the Resiliency Centre.
Great. Thanks, Jasmine. Just want to acknowledge that I'm calling from the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Just by way of background, our program, Provincial Disaster Psychosocial Team, is part of Health Emergency Management BC, which some of you might be familiar with, which is part of the Provincial Health Services Authority. Typically, we respond to emergencies. We work really closely with ESS, but obviously Lytton and some other communities are very different. So we're privileged to be involved in helping in any positive way and also committed for the long term. So I just want to reinforce that. There's I think 3 main ways that we can provide support. And as we move through, I really, there's always opportunity to hear back from you and see how we can provide support or how we might change that. So one of the ways is having an in-person presence at the Resiliency Centre. That obviously depends on the amount of people going through, but I think it's important regardless. There is some consistent presence. We really think it's important too that we have the same person there as much as possible, or if that person can't be, there's 2 people that people are familiar with or more familiar with, and that those people have a greater knowledge with the community and those that they're there to support. So that's one support. And I think that just gives us a better idea as well about what sort of services might be helpful. And I think it's, trust is so important as well. So the second thing that we can provide is some education. It's more around wellness education. I'll speak to that a little bit. I'll give you 2 examples. But I also want to really reinforce that there may be things that people in the community would like to know about. Maybe it's something related to how to support kids or elderly people, whatever it may be. We can certainly look into that. Part of our services is our DPS services, and we have access to a tremendous number of psychologists who volunteer their time. So certainly that option is there, and we would coordinate with any other services provided on the ground to make sure that's available, but happy to fill that gap. And then the third thing is, if there are community activities, happy to look at how we can support that. And those don't necessarily have to be wellness or mental health activities. I think just the opportunity for people to come together around something that is positive, the opportunity to talk, a little sense of normalcy, however small that might be, I think is so beneficial. So keep that in mind, and we're happy to support that type of activity as well. Just two examples of what we can provide around education. We can do this in person or we can do it virtually. One is the wellness exchange, and we introduced that in another community. Very low uptake when we offered it in person, but more uptake when we offered it virtually. The wellness exchange is simply 5 sessions. It's about 1 hour session. Oftentimes you can do it as part of a larger activity where people are at, and it just addresses a number of different coping mechanisms or ways of getting through difficult times. So one is problem solving skills, promoting positive activities, how to manage one's reactions when things are really difficult or as the time just wears on, and what you did a month ago really doesn't work anymore 3 months later. So it gives an opportunity to explore that. And then helpful thinking as well, because in many cases, after months and months, it gets difficult to be positive. It gets difficult to be telling yourself those helpful thoughts. So it goes through that. May be helpful to some people, may not be helpful to others. Or if people know this might be helpful to somebody else, we certainly have a flyer and we can advertise it. I really believe that it's important to offer things and let people make a choice. As I said, we offered in another community, very low uptake. I think 2 people initially, then 1, then they dropped off. And to me, that's okay as well. What is more important is that people know that there's options out there. And we're happy to reintroduce it in other ways. The second thing that might be helpful is a course called Psychological First Aid. That's really reinforcing a lot of knowledge that a lot of people already have, or introducing some additional skills. So it makes people more comfortable reaching out to those people that they might think might be having difficulties. So it's how to approach an individual, what might be helpful to say, what isn't always helpful to say, how to offer some real practical support. You know, allowing people to tell their story in a positive way, and then how to offer other types of assistance. So again, it's not counseling, it's really an opportunity to offer some additional knowledge and skills of how to support many people who are really experiencing normal reactions to very difficult events. So if there is interest in that, we can offer that. And the last thing I really want to highlight while I talked about those 2 options is just about that idea about us trying to be as flexible as possible. That if you say that doesn't work for us, but something else might work, and this is what we're hearing from community members, really open to hearing about that. And whatever we provide should really be addressing what you think is important. So I'll just leave that with you. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, David. Really helpful. We now have Sharon Lee from the Canadian Red Cross to provide an update on her end.
Yes, hi, I'm from the Canadian Red Cross. I'm the case management lead. And as Darlene has touched on, we have a small team at the Lytton Resiliency Centre. They'll be there since the 22nd, will be there till the 25th from 10 to 4 p.m. Oh, and I acknowledge that I'm speaking from the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc people in Kamloops. All right. The case management team will come again on March 21st to the 25th. There'll be Jason and his team. Again, we want to have the same people there so that there's consistency in service as well as familiar faces for people to reach out to. And in April, they'll be there again from the 19th to the 22nd. They'll be there at the center to provide navigational support for the beneficiaries in the recovery process. They can provide referrals, psychosocial support information assistance, and need assessment. And that's it from my end.
Great, thanks, Sharon. Next, we have Christy here from United Way.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I want to first acknowledge that I, too, am joining from the unceded and ancestral territory of Tecumseh to Secwepemc in the Secwepemc Ulu. I'm grateful to be here today. Thanks for including United Way. I wanted to share with everyone that United Way reopened our United for BC Wildfire Recovery Fund this summer. This was an appeal that was launched after the Elephant Hill Fire in 2017. The appeal is to raise funds to support immediate needs and long-term recovery efforts for major BC wildfires. This funding from the summer provided support for food and basic needs, cultural supports, childcare, mental health and counseling, wildfire education advocacy, community navigation, and empowering community resiliency. Some of the organizations locally that received some funding through this appeal were the Secwepemc Health Authority, Nicola Valley Food Bank, the Ashcroft Hub, the Equality Project, Skeeches and Band, CMHA, Lillooet Friendship Society, and the Savage Production Company. In addition, United Way has provided food infrastructure grants to help fund the development, implementation, or improvement of food infrastructure to support year-round long-term procurement, storage, and distribution of fresh, traditional, and other food, as well as enhancing community well-being and sustainability in some local communities, including the Lytton First Nation, Siska, Nikumen, and Kanakabar. We've also been able to leverage our relationships with donors to help provide funding to the Lytton Helping Hands Transition House, deliver new fridges and freezers to members of Cook's Ferry, and provide laptops to students who are displaced so they can still access their schooling. What I'm really excited about sharing this evening, and thank you again for allowing us to do so, is the High Neighbor Initiative. So through increased communication and participation, this initiative is designed to mobilize your voices, the voices of community, and to empower residents to find ways to together build vital connections among one another that will provide long-term and sustainable recovery. We'll begin by meeting with residents, businesses, community groups, city councilors, school districts, researchers, and the other stakeholders. Through discussion and community engagement, we will mobilize and inspire the residents to support the emotional and social rebuild of Lytton through the community's social infrastructure. As place-based community work often does, UWBC, United Way BC, will take our lead from you, the residents. Some of the outcomes we hope to see are increased connections, positive and strengths-based solutions to the local issues, and gatherings and celebrations that will both heal and empower. So what does this look like? The first step is hiring a community engagement specialist, which we're excited to announce. Ryan Denault will be starting this position on March 9th. He'll look to engage with the community through events, projects, and outreach, and will identify individual community champions. So this is what we call community builders, who will help provide ongoing development, with ongoing development, coaching, and support. So as mentioned by Darlene, we'll make sure that this job posting is available through the Resiliency Centre and other places, as we hope to also hire a local resident to do this work. It will be a part-time position and will be a part of a community of practice throughout our other High Neighbor initiatives in the province. We look to support and build on community-based responses, and because this is community-led, we'll be able to pivot our support effectively to help meet the needs of the residents of Lytton and surrounding areas and advocate on your behalf. In addition to this, we do also have a flood application open. So this application we opened on the heels of the fires, and know that a lot of the communities surrounding Lytton, as well as Lytton itself, were equally affected by the flooding. So I'll put that in the chat, how to access that funding through our application, as well as my email address. If you have any questions about any of the funding we've been able to provide, or the High Neighbor Initiative, or interested in the role that we're looking to fill locally, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again so much for the opportunity to speak tonight, and good luck to all the other speakers.
Great, thank you, Christy. Next, we have Sergeant Clay from Lytton and Lillooet RCMP. Sergeant Clay, are you here with us today?
Yep, I'm here, Jasmine. Thanks
Great.
for having me here again, and thank you, everybody. I'm still in Lillooet, up in Statliam Nation territory, and I'll make my update nice and short and sweet. We made some good moves here in the last month. We have secured our lease with LFN, and we are now in the next phase of our planning and mobilization for our temporary detachment. I'm now working on hopefully a late spring opening for our office down on the old hospital site on the corner of 12 and Main Street. Our procurement and contracting asset people are working closely with James and the village on our remediation and demolition of our existing properties here. So hopefully that will continue forward, and we'll be able to tie in with the village on that this spring and summer. Excitingly, we have now recruited an experienced member to fill one of our vacant spots. I spoke with our incoming Constable Kendrick Ultra. He's going to be transferring with his family from Winnipegtosis, Manitoba. I think I said that right, to the Lytton area, and I'm anticipating having him on the ground and into work here by the end of April into the middle of May, just in time for the summer season. I'm quite excited about that. We've been working with restorative justice and victim services to enhance our capacity and our service delivery into the community. Partnering with the Lillooet Friendship Society, we're been working with the training and capacity building so that as more community members start to return with our temporary housing, that we have extra services in place to support the community residents. This time of year, we start working with our local governments and chiefs and councils on our initiatives and our strategic priorities for the following year. So we run an April to March cycle where we run what's called our performance plan. And that's where we focus on our primary initiatives for service delivery into the community. So in speaking with some of the chiefs and with Madam CAO, we started to look at how we're going to develop our strategic priorities for the coming year. What we're looking at right now specifically is crime reduction, traffic, youth, and emergency planning. So we're going to spend a bit more time this year just fine-tuning some of our programs and some of our service delivery to make sure that we are hitting the mark and that we're giving the communities what we need. As far as an update on policing services and policing activities in the Lytton area since our last meeting, we still seem to be seeing the same average. We're about a call to 2 calls a day. There's been nothing really significant out of the ordinary that's popped up in the last little bit. And we still continue to work with MOT and with YRB, Dawson Road Maintenance, as we come through some of these challenges with Highway 1, Highway 12, and some of the other service roads in the area. But overall, things seem to be working pretty good for us.
Great, thank you so much, Sergeant Clay. Next on the list, we have Ben Berman from Canada Post.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to join you today. Coming from my home in New Westminster, the traditional territory of the Kikite First Nation. I just have a very brief update for everybody in terms of staffing, which is very important, so we can have consistent hours at the temporary post office. I talked today with the local area superintendent. He's very close to the final process with the 3 new hires, just getting their employee IDs and going through that initial phase of training. They should be fully up to speed at the end of, I think, 2 weeks. And at that time, that'll be fantastic because we'll be able to extend the hours at the temporary post office, which I'm sure will be welcome for the community. I understand there has been some closures due to Highway 12, unexpected closures, just come spur of the moment, and that's because our contingency staff that are being pulled down to staff are unable to access the post office or get there in timely fashion. So once these new folks come on board fully, that'll be eliminated and we won't have any more interruptions. Perhaps even more important is the larger 60-foot trailer, more accommodating and accessible. The location for this has been decided upon with the close partnership with the Lytton First Nation. My understanding is this will be almost a community hub. It's also where BC Ambulance will be placed, a health center, along with other services. We're all ready to go. The trailer is all fitted up and ready to go. We're just the final phase of sort of some bureaucratic red tape having to do with the Ministry of Transportation and some other agencies. We expect that to be done very, very soon and the trailer to roll down from Prince George. So folks should see that in the community in the next coming weeks. Once that's done, the last thing I'll mention is I know some folks have reached out about having a PO box. Once this larger trailer is in place, it will be able to host PO boxes for the entirety of the community, anybody who wants one. So that's great because I know it's very frustrating not having a mailing address for a lot of people. So that will alleviate that concern and everybody able to access a PO box. So again, I can't admire and thank the patience of this community enough. I know things have not moved as fast as they like in terms of Canada Post services, but we're very close to having that larger trailer in place and being fully staffed. And we look forward to serving the community there for the next couple of years until we're able to move back into our main post office in the community. So with that, I'll look forward to any questions if there is any.
Great, thanks so much, Ben. So we're on to our next session now, which is critical infrastructure. So our first update will be from Marianne and Derek from BC Hydro.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marianne Cools, and I'm with BC Hydro's Community Relations Department in the Southern Interior. And I have Derek Curl with me tonight. Derek is part of our Interconnections group, and he is responsible for leading the rebuilding of our system in Lytton. Very pleased tonight to be joining you from Castlegar, which is on the traditional territory of the Shuswabek, Tinaha, and Okanagan nations. First of all, I'd like to say from all of us at BC Hydro, I'd like to express our deepest sympathies to all of the residents who have been so terribly affected by the fire last year and who continue to be so deeply affected. Our hearts do go out to you. We are here to continue to support you and to help get you home as soon as we can. So from the beginning, we've been working with the Village of Lytton, Lytton First Nations, and other stakeholders. And of course, this is a complicated process of rebuilding the village. Our infrastructure was completely destroyed during last year's fire, and there is a lot of work ahead. This morning, we did receive direction from the village to move ahead with rebuilding the electrical system above ground as it was before the fire. And we expect at this point that the restoration will take approximately 6 to 9 months to complete. The restoration will be done at no cost to the village, and residential customers will be reconnected at no charge if the reconnection fee is not covered by your insurance. For commercial customers, there will be a reconnection fee as it's required by our electric tariff. So moving forward from here, we will continue to do everything we can to support our customers, assist with the recovery process, rebuild our system, and restore power. Once our infrastructure is rebuilt along the streets, customers can begin the process to reconnect by hiring a certified contractor and seeking appropriate approvals from the Village of Lytton and Technical Safety BC. To request a connection from BC Hydro, please visit us online at www.bchydro.com/getconnected, or you can also call us directly at 1-877-520-1355, and I'll put that website and phone number in the chat in just a minute here. So thanks again for having us here tonight, and I'm happy to take any questions in the chat or at the end of this meeting.
Great, thank you so much. Derek, any updates on your end?
Nope, just I mean, I can reiterate some of what Marianne already said is following the motion to restore the overhead system. We're looking forward to mobilizing, starting the design, and getting the power on through the streets.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Derek. And thank you, Marianne, so much. So next on the list, we have a bit of an update from TELUS that CAO Group will provide for us.
Good evening. I'm calling from the territory of the Secwepemc. My homeland is the unceded territory of the Simpcw First Nations. So welcome this evening, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to give you a quick update on behalf of Melanie Berry, who is the Manager of Community Services and Excellence for TELUS, because she was unable to attend. TELUS has been able to remove debris from the site and will be removing fallen cables in the community in the coming months. Their engineering teams have completed drawing plans for the new central office, and those are currently awaiting permits for the next steps. TELUS continues to work with the village and BC Hydro for the most effective way to rebuild. They estimate that customers will have restoration of services sometime this fall, providing timelines remain as planned.
Great, thank you so much, Leslie. So on to the next section, which is a financial update, and I believe that'll be on utilities, the budget open house, and an update on charitable donations receipts, and those will all be provided by Terry, our CFO.
Thanks, Jasmine, and thank you everyone for attending, and happy to be here again to provide an update into a number of financial matters to do with the village. So the first thing on the agenda for the update is the update on utilities. As per the council resolution, a number of of meetings ago, we have processed the third and fourth quarter utility charges to all property owners in the village. And further to that council motion, we are processing the write-offs in accordance with that motion. So any property that was destroyed, we'll have those amounts written off. And then those folks living in Loring and Ponderosa are getting a small write-off. And so I would expect by February 28th, we'll have the ability to provide a statement of account for all property owners as to what is owed, both not for utilities, but property taxes as well. The next thing on the agenda for the financial part is we're starting to work on the 2022 through 2026 5-year financial plan and 2022 budget. And so we've developed a schedule for that. And so the important part for residents to pencil in their calendars is on March the 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. We're going to be hosting a budget open house from 6 to 8 p.m. and it'll be via Zoom as well. So please put that in your calendars and bring your questions and thoughts with you. We're happy to take them. And the last thing on my agenda is the update on the charitable donation receipts. So the portal on the village website integrates a company that processes these charitable donation receipts. And I've received a number of messages from people saying that the receipts do not conform with the Canada Revenue Agency required elements in terms of a charitable donation receipt to deduct on your tax return. So if you're one of those folks that donated to the village, please send us a message at finance@lytton.ca, and we're happy to get you an appropriate receipt. I've checked with the company that runs the portal, and there's no way for them to, in a short period of time at least, edit and change the format of the receipts that they're issuing. So we want to make sure that whoever has been generous and donated some funds for the recovery, that we can get them a proper charitable donation receipt for their tax return. So I apologize for that, but we have a solution to it, and just email us and we'll get you a receipt in very short order. And that's the extent of my financial report. Thank you very much, Jasmine.
Great, thank you, Terry. So on to the next section, and I think it's the last section actually, which is local government. And Leslie is going to provide all of the updates, and that'll be on the by-election, an update on the economic development officer role, and a few other employment opportunities.
Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you very much for moderating this evening for us. So on the by-election, the dates to submit your nominations would be March 15th to March 25th. So the opening is March 15th, the closing of nominations is March 25th. On April the 2nd, the campaign can start. April the 20th is advanced polls at the Cumsheen Elementary School for the Resiliency Centre. On April the 30th is general voting day, and May 4th is the last day to declare the official results of the election. Once all those counts have been done, it will be done by mail-in ballot, and Shannon Story is the Chief Elections Officer. You can contact her for information at corporate@lytton.ca. Next is an update on the economic development role that was posted. This closed last Friday, so myself and 2 other team members will be reviewing the applications. Further to that, the village has, with the receipt of the funding, and thanks the province very much for the support that they've given the village of Lytton in order for us to get going with business. We have opportunities that will be posted in the coming week: communications support, admin support, finance support, building permit support, and housing project manager. The housing project manager actually has been selected and will report to go to council on March the 9th. At this time, I'd like to thank the recovery team for all the efforts that they've put in, that I've been working with since November. And quick jump to the evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that update. So we are now going to move into general questions and answers and feedback. Sort of an open session. So if you do have a question today, please use the chat box and we will go through them sort of one by one as they come in until we run out of time. You can also raise your hand on Zoom to speak out loud, which we recommend so we can see your face and your voice. Any questions, if we do run out of time that we aren't able to answer today, or if we don't have the answer, we'll put those in a written Q&A and we'll post that to the website afterward. So there you go. There's a few instructions. We'll leave that up for a couple minutes and then we'll take it down so you can see everyone's faces here. So I know we've received a number of questions in the chat. I'm just going to pull up the document and start at the top here. But if you do want to ask your question out loud, please just raise your hand. So that's reactions at the bottom of your screen and then raise hand. So the first question on my list is a bit of a statement here first and then a question. So the village continues to be under a state of emergency. What is the emergency? Why are we hazardous? If you can just provide a little bit of context as to why we're still under a state of emergency.
I did respond to that. Sorry, I would like to send out a posting on the website. I did actually respond to that question earlier. However, I don't have it in front of me.
No worries. Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure that gets posted after. Thanks. The next question, I believe, may have been answered in the chat, but just to make sure everybody saw it, I think this is for James. Do both insured and uninsured need to complete the right of access forms for the village?
Yes, if possible, we're requesting that everybody could provide those right of access forms. We understand that there may be some folks whose insurance coverages are limited, and we are certainly working on a program to try and be able to respond to any challenges that any homeowners in the village have. So if you can just get information to us about your needs, we'll work with the program that we have existing, and we'll certainly work with homeowners that need our help on other work. So I guess the short answer is if you kindly can, yes, please.
Great. And while I have you, James, the next question is, and I think you touched on this a bit, but if you can clarify, as my insurance is not covering the cost of the Heritage Branch archaeological assessment during cleanup of my property, can you confirm who will be paying or how the cost will be covered?
I can confirm at this time that the wildfire debris cleanup program is only for the uninsured folks within the village right now. I will also recognize that the village has heard loud and clear from folks sending us emails and phone calls about the risk of insurance companies not covering that portion of the work. So we have certainly raised that and escalated, and we're trying to work with our partners around a solution to that. But as of right now, the funding is in place for uninsured only.
Great, thanks, James. Noni, I see your hand raised now. I'm going to ask you to unmute so you can ask your question out loud.
Unmute. And I will do video too. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. I have a couple questions. One for David from mental health. He made some interesting comments and it kind of caught my attention. I wondered about community events, and I'm kind of involved in community events here quite a lot. And when I hear people that aren't here talking about community events, it kind of perks up my radar, and I kind of wonder, okay, does that mean somebody else is going to start organizing stuff here, or somebody wants to know what we're organizing here? And I just kind of wanted that clarified a little bit.
Yeah, of course. You know, I just think in terms of supporting a community, sometimes we typically think of mental health and psychosocial well-being as like one-on-one, you know, conversation or counseling or groups. But I also think, you know, just having opportunities for people to come together also has a significant bearing. So with that in mind, that's where my comment was coming from. And if there were some events that needed to be supported, certainly feel free to reach out and we can see what we can do around providing some support on that. You know, for example,
How do we
sorry.
access your information to do that? Because yeah, I got a few things on my list that are going on here.
Okay, you know, I can put my email in the chat box if you like.
Sure, or give it to Denise at the Resiliency Centre. That'd be really good.
Okay, if it's better through Denise, happy to do that.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Can I ask Ben, the post office guy, something if he's still here?
Sure, absolutely.
Is he?
Sorry, I am
Yes, I
still
think
here.
I see
Yeah,
him.
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Ben. Yeah,
Hi there.
I was wondering, I'm thinking about that poor little girl driving from Clinton every day. Bless her heart. Where does the actual mail come from now? Is it coming from from Kamloops and getting shipped to Lytton, or is it doing a different route?
No, it's coming from Kamloops.
Okay,
The depot in Kamloops down to Lytton. That's correct.
the same route that it used to be on.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you. That just kind of helps me understand how my parcels are getting here.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Great, thanks, Noni.
And Christy for the United Way. I would really appreciate her sharing her information with Denise as well, because I heard parts of what she said, and I think I missed some key information. So if she could share that with the Resiliency Centre as well, and we could have that there, I would really appreciate seeing it in I hear you, but I don't remember exactly what you say.
Thank you, Nani. Yes, absolutely. And I just put in the chat too that we have some funding that can also help with local events. So let's connect.
Yeah, I'd like to. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Jasmine.
Great, thanks, Noni. All right, I'll ask a couple more questions that we received in the chat. The first one is a bit of a series of questions relating to railway cleanup. So maybe I'll ask them all and we can address them as best as possible as a group. So the first is, how will the village address the issue of getting railways to clean up wildfire fuel through the village? How will the issue of wildfire fuel management be addressed both in and around the peripheral of the village? Will there be a bylaw addressing this for Lytton? A couple more just on the same topic. What is the plan to address this problem with the CPRNC and rail lines through the village? And what about fuel management? So all kind of related to cleanup and managing the railways. Do we have anyone on the line that could address that? I don't know, maybe that's James. If not,
I can jump in.
Okay.
So obviously what the railways are federally regulated. And so this is a difficult conversation. And I don't believe that the province or the village do have the mechanisms to prescribe how the railways deal with it. I do know that they do have mechanisms for the federal government and some relationships with the province. I would say that the province and the village, Lytton First Nation and NTC certainly are partners in Fire Smart BC and some of those programs that are in place. And so I think that mitigating fuel, part of the bylaw describes some options for mitigating fuel within the community. And I do know that CN and CP Rail are certainly at the table having discussions around how they can support this. But from a teeth or a process that the village or province can prescribe, I'm not certain that there is an option for that at this point.
Okay, thank you, James. That's great. Megan, I see your hand is up. I'll ask you to unmute so you can ask your question out loud.
Okay, and I'll just try to start the video as well. Okay. Hi, yeah, I'm Megan Fandrich, and I'm here in the village of Lytton right now. And I have two questions and a comment. My first question is about not the state of emergency, but the homes on Loring Way at Ponderosa and Kent Road are still under evacuation alert, which we have been since the George Road fire receded on, I believe the evacuation order was downgraded on August 20th, but we are still under alert, and I'm wondering when that will be lifted.
CAO Grew, I wasn't aware that you were actually, so I apologize for that, and I'll look into it because you should not be.
Okay, thanks. My next question is about insurance. When I sent a letter in to mayor and council and village staff about the building bylaws. I received a reply from someone on council that more or less subtly hinted that we won't be able to get any new insurance policies if the bylaws don't pass with strict fire control measures. And so I just wanted to clarify whether there has actually been any correspondence from the insurance providers, whether that will be the case, because I received that in 2 emails from someone on council. And it does directly contradict what someone from the Insurance Bureau of Canada said at one of the Community Advisory Council meetings that I was watching. So yeah, just wondering about clarification on that, please.
Well, it only stands to reason that if we do not build back in a more fire resilient way, that insurance companies will then turn around and adjust their rates to reflect that. Furthermore, if there are in the future more of these catastrophic events, the likelihood of them even offering insurance will go down as well.
Okay, but has the village actually received any correspondence, or is this just based on a hunch?
It's based on common sense. Okay.
And so my last bit is just a comment, not a question. I just wanted to point out, as someone that was insured, I wanted to just make sure that everyone on the call realizes that our insurance policies, that the majority of us are now finding that we are underinsured. In other words, as costs go up for building, we're finding that our insurance limits aren't enough to actually rebuild our buildings as they were. We're also finding that the limit in our insurance policies for demolition isn't enough to cover the cost of demolition. And other expenses like archaeological, for example, that aren't covered by insurance. These are all costs that would have to come out of pocket. But just a reminder that Lytton is generally a low income community and a retired community. And a lot of us would find it very difficult to, especially after losing our community, we'd find it difficult to get another mortgage in just to cover the excess costs to rebuild buildings that we had there. So I just wanted to make that comment that as costs keep rising, the number of uninsured people keep rising, and this is a pretty big concern for a lot of us. And I really appreciate that you've all had this meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you for that feedback. I do see Yvonne's hand is raised. So Yvonne, oh, not anymore. Okay. I will go back to, oh, it's back here. Yvonne, I'll ask you to unmute now.
Hi, I just wanted to, I'm Yvonne Raymakers. I'm with the Red Cross. I just wanted to specifically address what Megan was just speaking about. We don't have an agreement in place yet with the Village of Lytton in terms of the debris removal program. However, the program is available to insured and inadequately insured people as well. So if you do have insurance and you have expenses that go beyond what your coverage is and that relate directly to the debris removal, please reach out to the Red Cross. Those, as Sharon mentioned earlier, there's case managers that are on site at the Resiliency Centre. And I mean, we can guide you through what the possibilities are there. So yeah, there is some hope for that.
Perfect. Thanks, Yvonne. Sorry, I was on mute there. So I'm just going to jump to some of the written questions now. So the next one here, I think was addressed, but maybe we can provide just a little bit more detail. What is the status of a Village of Lytton office and or public works station? I was just gonna say, could you answer that one?
Currently, we are working with a proponent on a lease agreement for rental space for the village office to be established. And as far as public works go, we're hoping that that same space will be able to accommodate the public works.
Okay, great, thank you. The next one here is about infrastructure repairs. So I'm thinking maybe this might be James. But what supports are in place to support infrastructure repair? Water, sewer, hydro for TNRD residents specifically. I don't know if we can speak to this, but maybe you have context.
No, I can't actually. I apologize, but I don't have any information about the TNRD and any of the infrastructure that was damaged or what the plans are for repairing it. I believe that BC Hydro can probably speak to the hydro portion specifically, but from the water, wastewater, or any other critical infrastructure, I don't actually have an answer on that. I apologize.
Okay, no worries. We'll take that one back to NBC Hydro if you're still here and are able to respond. Please unmute or raise your hand and we'll come back to you.
Jasmine, it's Marianne. I think we'll have to look into that one, Derek, unless you can address that.
I can only say that my focus has been on the Village of Lytton works, but I do know that our teams are working in other areas. Yeah, if we can address it offline, I can look into it.
Sure, okay, we'll note that one. Thanks, Derek, and thanks, Marianne. So I see there are a couple hands up again. Megan, I'm going to come back to you. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi, thanks. Just to follow up to what Yvonne from the Red Cross was saying about case managers working with underinsured people from the Red Cross. I have had quite a bit of contact with the Red Cross, and as someone who lost a business and my only source of income and my community, they have after actually some really triggering conversations, informed me that there are no supports in place for people who didn't lose their residence. So I just wanted to put that out there, and that's been confirmed with me from Tammy, who I believe is in charge of the Red Cross in the area, something like that. But yeah, so there are no supports, Red Cross supports available, even for something like therapy for my 5-year-old who is really traumatized by the fire. Red Cross is not able to fund or has basically refused. I'm not eligible because I didn't lose my home. So I'm not sure if everyone's aware of that, but I really appreciate all the supports Red Cross is giving to other members of the community who did lose their homes. But for those of us who didn't, it's no help. That's all. That's my comment. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. And we'll loop back with the Red Cross too and try to provide as much as much detail in this Q&A as possible that we can for everybody here on the Red Cross services. So the next question on the list is, where specifically will the village office be located?
At this point, I wouldn't want to comment on that because of the negotiations that we're doing with the proponent.
Okay, so we'll let people know as soon as possible then. Great, and Noni, I see your hand up as well. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi, a couple more questions. When the $8 million funding thing came out, I heard frequently reference to sewer and water infrastructure, and it really has me quite curious, like what has to be done with the sewer and the water? Like, is there stuff going on that nobody really knows about? And how did the fire damage the sewer?
James, do you have any details on that you can provide, Noni?
Yeah, sure I do, Noni. It's a good question. Obviously, the infrastructure is buried underground, so not a lot of it was necessarily damaged. We did have Urban Systems do a damage assessment on the village in the months after the fire. They did identify that a lot of the curb stops were either destroyed or damaged. So that's at each individual residence where we would turn off the main water supply from the main trunk line at the road to go to individual houses. So we believe that probably half of those need to be dug up and replaced. Obviously, fire hydrants, any of the fittings and valves around the fire hydrants, some of them are fine according to Public Works, but some of them are also identified as being destroyed. There's a number of leaks. We know there's leak detection required, and so we are looking at putting CCTV cameras down into it. We do have the water system isolated for the downtown core right now, so there is no water running into it, mostly because of the health concerns about contaminating the water supply for the residents who are receiving potable water. So trying to be very careful about that. And so to do some of the testing and leak detection, we are going to need to activate the water. So there are a number of things that need to be done. There's a lot of testing that needs to be done to actually validate if there were things destroyed under the ground that we can't see. So yeah, it's a little bit of what we know and a little bit of what we don't know. And so the idea is once we've removed the surface debris and some of the remediation activities have been completed, we'll start to get in contractors to start doing some of those testing and inspections and replacements for us as part of the work plan. So I'd say the money that you're specifically identifying is for some of the planning and testing and inspection activities. And then we do have a request in further for what we believe will be costs to do replacements. And then I believe, Noni, some of the other things would be like the cutting of concrete and patching of asphalt, where we do have to go in and dig into that, would be lumped into that funding source.
So when you applied for, you got $8 million, the village got $8 million. I'm assuming there was a list that came to that total, and that's how that ended up being $8 million. It wasn't just a random number that the province decided to send the village. There was a list of things that was paying for, and then you've alluded to that. And that I was just wondering, like, because I had heard it several times, what that meant. So thank you very much for that. The other thing, when you mentioned testing, so we've got a series of events that are going to happen. So there's the primary debris removal with the surface stuff coming off, and then there is the soil removal. Now I'm hearing two different things, and I'm not sure what's real and what's not. So back in August, there was testing done that identified all this horrible toxins that we're dealing with, and now I'm wondering, is there another set of tests that you're referring? You mentioned testing a couple of times here, that has to happen like before, during, or after the surface removal of like dirt? Is that what, and is it going to take as long to get those results back as the initial results took? Because that was like almost 2 months it took to get those results back.
The answer is yes to most of that. So yeah, the GHD report that was commissioned early on was a high level report that took a couple of samples from quite a few random places across the land to classify the materials in general. The report basically says that we need to treat all materials in the village as asbestos containing, although they don't all contain asbestos because of WorkSafe BC. So the cleanup needs to treat the materials in the manner that are found present. For us to further categorize the materials to deposit them in landfill, through the legislation that landfills operate under, we need to provide them with a very clear account of what we are dumping in the landfills. And of course, we're charged based on what type of material we dump in the landfill. So it's important for us from a cost efficiency point of view to actually do the testing to validate and not just pay a broad rate, which we may end up doing generally anyway because of the way legislation works. The testing will not be as long as the first round. Again, through council, we were awarded, or we approved a direct award to the same consultants and contractors that are already working for Lytton First Nation. And so some of the assumptions have been made and validated through the work that they're already doing. And so the testing regime will be more focused based on what they are finding with a very similar part of the community. And so I think we'll be able to be a lot more focused. And some of the testing that they had to do in the first place that did take very long, we did not find some of those items in the contaminants. So we can start to rule out items, generally speaking. And then, yeah, after we do the surface, we need to go down and find out how far some of them, like the metals and other contaminants, have leached in the soil. And so we are hearing, different units of what that is generally. And so rather than take everything out of the ground, we're going to try and delineate how much we have to take. Because again, there's quite a bit of cost. I'd say 50% of all the cost is dropping stuff at the landfill. So trying to be very cautious and methodical about the work that we do so that we can afford to do the work.
Yeah. Thank you, James. That was really helpful. I have another question, but I can wait on it.
Sure, I'll answer some of the other ones here. I'll go through those ones and then I'll come right back to you, okay? So I do see Sharon Lee from Red Cross's hand is up. Sharon, please feel free to unmute.
Hi, I'd just like to respond to Megan. We can provide some mental health supports now. So I'm just wondering if I could give Megan a call tomorrow and have a further talk with her on this.
Sure, Megan, if you want to sort of direct message Sharon in the chat, that would work, or feel free, Megan, to email communications@lytton.ca if that's of interest to you, and I can connect you with Sharon afterward.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Okay, I have a couple more written questions here. They are along the same lines, and I believe they are from James, or sorry, are for James. So just to follow up to a bit about the debris removal and the archaeological assessment. So I'll read them both. It sounds like I should not have my insurance company do debris removal. It would be easier for everyone if it was all done at the same standard. So maybe that's just a comment to take back for consideration. And then the second one is, are you, and by that I believe it's the Village of Lytton, advocating for insured to have the archaeological assessment covered as the uninsured are?
Yeah, the village is advocating for the residents of Lytton to have the same level of service across all properties in the village. And I think there's a lot of questions about why we're going to the efforts that we are to hire the consultants and contractors to provide a premium service. We want to protect the residents for the long term. We want to do it right. We want to get it right. We have one chance at this. And so we're advocating for the people in Lytton. That's exactly what we're doing all the way across the board.
Great, thanks. And then another question for you, James. Why is Lytton doing all these testing procedures when other fire-affected communities have not?
I can't really speak to the other communities and what they're doing. We are very clearly legislated environmentally and with WorkSafe BC on what we need to do. And so we're following those requirements. All consultants and contractors that work in the province of BC are required to follow the exact same procedures. So if they are dealing with similar materials on the ground, they will have to follow the exact same procedures as we are. And their testing will drive what the contractor has to do to make the property fully remediated and ready to be built back by the residents of those communities.
Great, thank you, James. I see Denise's hand is up here. Denise, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, everyone. I think this question might be for Leslie. Can you comment on where we're at with the Unmet Needs Committee and as well what's happening with the survey? Thank you.
So the Unmet Needs Committee closed last Friday, so I'll gather that information. I'll take a report to council on March the 9th. And then as far as the survey goes, we're still working through conversations with the NNTC and LFN for their to understand where they're at with their residents returning or not. So yeah.
Okay, so is the survey going to be focused on interim housing needs for Lytton, Village of Lytton?
Yes, it is.
Residents? Okay, good,
And
thank you.
we were initially going to ask volunteers, and thank you very much for all the time you're putting in. But from a freedom information perspective, we actually are required to do it with the staff. So thank you for offering, and anybody else that did. I apologize I didn't get back to tell you why we haven't asked you, but thank you very, very much for all the hard work you're doing for the community.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Noni, I'm coming back over to you now. I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, there's probably for James. So we're at the point where we're seeing stuff come off the ground really soon here, and that'd be really exciting. Can James or somebody just walk us through the process of what happens next and next and next. Like we have hydro working in the background on a plan, and we have people wondering if they should be talking to their contractors because there may be a bylaw for building in place. I think it'd be really helpful right about now just to hear the next stages of the process and how long we can expect these to probably take. And James, I know you alluded to that earlier when you first mentioned your job, and I just thought maybe you could answer that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we are looking at the short term right now, really, and trying to make sure that we get all the moving pieces in order so that we can get on the ground and then keep moving on the ground once we're there. So there's a lot of work to do on that side. But we do want to start doing community planning. We want to start doing longer range planning. We want to start looking at mid and longer term housing options. And so we do have that as part of our work plan. So the idea is debris removal, critical infrastructure, including water systems, hydro, TELUS, all coming into the community, new bylaws in place, the village operational and functioning out of a village office, and then looking at, the next phase would be the rebuild phase. And so as part of the rebuild phase, and again, this would be at the direction of the residents and mayor and council, would be that community planning level of what do we do with the vacant municipal properties? What do we build back? Are there requirements for different designations in the community from a land-based perspective than were there before? So I think that would be the next step, Noni, would be to start doing the community level planning and engagement with residents, and then translate that into actions for staffs to take around hiring expertise to come in and work with us to develop those plans. And so obviously on the residential side, you're looking at a milestone. When do people say that they can put a foundation in the ground, right? And start the planning on that side.
Mm-hmm. So what, like how many months before like community planning starts? Are we talking a month or 5 months or a day? Like what, I have no concept right now of when that could possibly happen.
It is part of our earlier planning. So we would like to see it occur in 2022 as a start point. Is that in the middle of the summer or later in the fall? I'm not sure. I think that would be again up to the community, mayor and council, funding availability and some of those items.
I see.
I'd like to comment on that. The CAO group is, we are working on a request for proposal for the official community plan update. So that's a bit in the short term here.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Leslie.
So we are working on a request for proposal to go out to update the official community plan in the next short term. The proposal will go out. That does take a bit of time.
Yeah.
So that is on the immediate plan.
Okay, so updating the official community plan is your first action that you want to carry out.
Yes, and that Mr. Matuzzi's been working through the zoning bylaw, which will fit with the building bylaw requirements.
Yes.
The other project that we're looking at that's really vital to the region is to get funding for a regional economic development strategy, which would include obviously the First Nations, the village, and the regional districts and stakeholders.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, James and Leslie both.
Noni, I would just say as well, you know this, everybody knows this, we have a lot going on and we're very focused on getting things moving. But if there's things that the residents want through the committee with Councillor Hay, bringing recommendations or items forward that you think need to be prioritized, certainly welcome, just to make sure we're not missing things or zoning in on items where we're being too narrow in our thinking. So certainly these conversations are important.
Thanks, James, and thanks, Noni. We have just a couple more questions that have come in. A reminder, if you have any more, please send those through right away. So the first question, and I believe this is for CAO GRU, folks are wondering if Fraser Basin Council is still involved with plan development. So if you could just comment on their role.
So we are in discussions with Fraser Basin Council.
Great. The next question is, why have we hired a community consultation expert? Can we not use the Citizens Advisory Committee to save money?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that position.
Yeah, I'm not, whoever wrote this question, if you could, are you speaking to the village community consultation expert? Because I don't think we have someone on staff. Or are you speaking to a different organization? I'll just give it a few minutes just in case more context comes in. Very automatically muted there, sorry. I don't see any other questions that have come in that we haven't either addressed or noted to take back with us. So please send those through. I think there's one more. Has there been any thought given to west side access from the train bridge on the village side when the ferry will have to close due to high water? So I believe that might be a transportation question, unless someone here.
Yeah, I can jump in to start with Jasmine. Owen has brought that forward as a risk to the community, and so I walked the site with him when I was in town. Obviously, I'm familiar with it, and trying to, through the work plan, provide access for parking and other things. Obviously, that's starting fairly quickly at the end of May into June and through to August. So I won't say that we have a full plan in place for it, but we recognized it and we're certainly trying to work through it and to resolve access to that bridge during the high water period.
Great, thank you, James. And so there was clarification, and it looks like they're just wondering now, it sounded like a community consultation consultant was hired, but I don't think that's the case. CIO Group, can you just confirm?
I can confirm that there hasn't been a community consultation person hired.
Okay, great, thank you. And I believe that brings us to the end of the questions for today. Thank you so much for everybody that sent those through. The ones that we need to take back, we'll make sure that those get posted in the Q&A afterward. Now I'd like to turn it over to CAO Group just to provide some closing remarks.
Thank you, Jasmine. Tonight, I'd like to thank the residents for all their patience that they've been putting forward with the complex, difficult situation that they've been in for the past 7+ months. I'd also like to thank the businesses for their past services to the community, and we hope that we can help them rebuild. I'd like to thank the provincial teams, both municipal affairs that we've been working with on a practically daily basis, on the EMBC staff, one of them sitting across from us on a daily basis. We're back and forth. And mostly, I would like to recognize Mayor Polderman, Councillor Hay, and Councillor Gray, because I cannot imagine what it's like to be in their chair day after day, seeing what's happened to their community, the devastation, and then trying to rebuild and taking the comments and questions and the patience of the community and citizens. These people care deeply for your community. I've worked with them for 3.5 months, and I say that they care very deeply for the community and for the people of Lytton and area. That's my comment. Thank you, Coach Jen.
Thank you, CAO Group. So we are just going to bring the presentation back up just so you can see the next date of the community meeting. So community meeting number 5 is going to be on Thursday, March 24th. So please save the dates in your calendars. So thank you all so much for attending today's community meeting, both residents and our resource folks and agencies that are here to provide their updates and to answer questions. We really appreciate all of your feedback and all of your questions today. It helps us make better decisions moving forward, having you here and participating. So like I said, anything that we didn't capture will get taken back. We'll make sure we get that Q&A posted, hopefully within the next week here. So please just look out for that on the website. If you do have any additional questions that maybe you think of later today or tomorrow, please just email communication@lytton.ca. Communication, no S at the end, @lytton.ca. or you can actually email a member of the village team, the village staff. So we'll put in the links to find everybody's emails there if you have a direct question for someone. Finally, we do have an office number. It's 778-254-5004 if you'd prefer speaking to someone on the phone. So with that, that concludes the end of the meeting. Thank you again all so much and have a great night.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.